So this was a real pivotal point for them. If they didn't get that, they were out. And I said, look, if I don't deliver it, don't pay me. You've nothing to lose here. Give me the job. Don't pay me till I'm finished. Contract was probably about €500,000. It was huge.
Ciaran Marron, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, can we start just by giving me an overview of the business, what you do today, kind of what kind of size you are, and anything you're kind of comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, no problem. So, Activate Solar Energies, we're a solar business, do exactly what it says on the tin, and have been. We're 20 year in business. And we cover all from residential houses right up to utility scale solar. So that's the large scale solar you'll see in fields around the country, in Ireland, UK, and further afield. So it's fully in-house function. We've in excess of 300 staff, headquartered in Carrickmacross. We have offices in Naas, depot in Cashel and Ballinasloe, Liverpool, recently in Burnley in the UK as well, and looking further afield to Europe in the next 2 years.
How did you get into it? So how did you start the business? From what was the kind of first idea, and how did you kind of get it going?
In my previous life, I suppose, I worked in renewables in heat pumps, and it was new to Ireland at the time, and it was extremely busy. We were all cutting our teeth at it and learning it, and it was something that interested me. Solar could plug into that. It was heat pumps, and how could solar work with this? And the company I worked at the time had no interest in solar. And I had a passion for learning and trying to find what I could find out about it. And when I eventually took the step to move away from that business and set up my own company, it was still in the back of my mind. I knew I couldn't go straight at it. I had to get the normal bills paid and get up and running and get back to electrical contracting. But it was in the back of my mind, so I'd done some research into it, looked in UK, indeed Europe, went to a couple of trade shows and figured out, this solution, it works in the UK, there's a good market in the UK, why is it not being delivered in Ireland? And yes, was it a leapfrog from that to figuring out how we could make it a business in Ireland. And we started in new builds only. At that time, retrofit wasn't really a thing. There was some grants or government supports, but new build is where it was at for building regulations. And we were lucky enough, we won a couple of contracts locally where builders knew that we were only starting into it and were working with us for us to figure it out. And yes, I suppose they supported us, still would do till this day. And we cut our teeth at the new builds, but that wasn't really long lived, considering I set up in 2006 and recession was looming. When recession hit, new builds was a no-go. So we'd learned our trade and learned it very fast, but all of a sudden there was no work, and plenty of bills to be paid, plenty of builders who couldn't pay us, and that's where it became the retrofit market for us.
So you started as an electrical contractor, almost doing what you were doing in your last company for yourself, and then you had the solar energy idea, if you like, or separate business in your mind.
Yeah, so maybe take it back a little bit. I came out of secondary school. All I wanted to do was work for my dad. So I'd work for him the whole way through, indeed, national school and secondary school. He was a milk machine technician. He had his own business. And that was installing milk machines on farms all around Louth and Monaghan. And it was just, I loved what I did. I trade, I loved working with my hands. My school results would tell you I was better that side as well. And nothing to do me, only I wanted to move into the family business. And my dad said at the time, he said, look, we'd love to have you in the family business, but I want you to go out and see what the big bad world's about. I want you to go to college and see how you get on there. Spend 1 year there. If you don't like it, come back. Yes, absolutely. We'd love to have you back. I suppose the rest is history. You went to college, and I suppose I didn't really want to go to college. A good friend of mine was heading to the Dundalk College. He was actually chasing a girl that was heading there.
As good a reason as any.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he came to me, he says, look, I had Limerick and I had Dundalk, and I'm a bit of a homeboard still am. I said, look, right, I'll go with you to Dundalk. he lasted till Christmas. He quit. I knew I had to stay till the semesters were out, and it came the end of it. I was fortunate enough to win an award with Intel, who sponsored me year on year. As I said, for every year I stayed in college, it sponsored me, and indeed I could do some work experience with them throughout. So it was a wee bit of an incentive to stay at college. I was beginning to enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it at the start, to be honest with you, but was beginning to enjoy it. So when I came out, I was an electronic engineer. I came out of college, and at the exact same time, we're hitting around 2000, Millennium broke. So I was guaranteed a job in Intel. I got a phone call to say no jobs. Xerox were after moving to the dock a couple of years previous. Did a huge recruitment drive. Everything was a standstill. There was redundancies, and now I was qualified at something that there was no work involved in. I suppose during what I'd done with my dad and what I was doing, working at during college, a number of jobs during college to keep myself in it, was electrical and very similar to electronics. And so, a good friend of mine, he said, look, why don't you get in a job with electrical? You're good at it. It's not that different. And I said, there's no way I'm going back to do my apprenticeship after coming out of college. I was very fortunate to fall in with a company from RD who said, look, I respect that you have your electronics. Let's go at your apprenticeship, but I'll not put you through your apprenticeship rate. And yes, served my apprenticeship. And towards the end of that is when I moved into the company that was working in renewables. So my whole background is electronics and electrical. The renewables was a bolt-on towards the end of my apprenticeship. And it was crazy. As I said, like I was working all the hours God sent. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, back up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, heading away again. And it was tough. It was a new technology. There was a lot of learning in it. And to be honest with you, when I left that business to set up my own, I just wanted to get back to basics. So back to electrical contracting. Didn't last too long at just electrical. I had a number of builders indeed who would approach me knowing we know we understand the heat pump market, what's this look like, and fairly quickly moved into the mechanical background. But electrical contracting was what the business was initially set up to do. But yeah, we did pivot, obviously.
You're obviously like a very technical person, right? And you said there a second ago, like you love working with your hands more so, right? And kind of getting stuck in. And I'm interested because you've built this pretty big business, and I suppose you couldn't have done it if you were the person doing the manual labor or the install. You would have stayed a small business, but ultimately that's kind of what you enjoyed at the time. Could you just maybe talk a little bit about your transition? And this might be a longer story than I'm anticipating, but from kind of being the technician and the person who loves the kind of manual work to being a CEO, of a much larger kind of organization.
Yeah, it was a huge transition, and I would regularly say I'm a CEO by default. That's not what I went to college to do. I haven't got a business degree or accounts for that matter. And yeah, I love what I do. I still love what I do. And yeah, hands-on experience. I was always trying to do things better, improve processes. When we'd be doing an installation, I was always thinking ahead, how we can make it simpler, leaner, easier on the staff, easier on the client. And I was very passionate about that, but I had that feeling, I got to be on site. I got to be there to make sure that I work through it. And there's a certain point in a business where you come that you're now the bottleneck to the business growth. And that was a very difficult time. I remember it, distinctly. I was working all day, coming home, spending 4, 5, 6 hours at night, sitting at a laptop, trying to get quotations together, trying to drum up some business. Working with my mum. My mum was doing my accounts, so explaining to her where the spends were, where they weren't, what receipts I was missing, what I had to chase. So I remember sitting down with actually my dad, and he said, look, it's probably come to the point that you need to, come away from the jobs. And it was difficult because I felt like no one could do it like I could do it. But how wrong was I? As the business grows and grows, you employ people better than you ever were at different roles. But for me, probably one of the big things, the success of the business is because I was the engineer, because I was the guy on the tools. I respect what the guys go through on the road. As we grew a business, we went from electrical contracting to solar technology. But all on that, we had to build a sales arm, a marketing arm. We couldn't afford it. So I was involved in all of them processes. So the guys were out working, I was trying to figure out how we're going to market this, what we're going to do, researching it, talking to different people. And I've worked in all the arms of the businesses, right through from telesales. I remember myself and my wife, Orla, we used to book appointments to go out and visit people, and we always said the night before you need to confirm that they're coming. We used to go in on a Sunday for 3 or 4 hours to make sure the appointments were ready for the guys going out on the road Monday, to make sure the customer was going to be there. We won't let the customer down. We weren't letting our consultants or engineers down. So I've done all the roles, but I think that's what was testament to what we've built. I said I'm a CEO by default. I'm still learning, ever learning, and that no more than today. I leave here to go to meet my cohort. I'm doing Leadership for Growth program with Enterprise Ireland. I'm meeting with them after lunch. So it's probably where I would have lacked early on, but ambition, I suppose, and determination gets you a long way, and employing the right people. For me, the thing became easier when it became comfortable. You knew you were going to survive, and you could recruit the right people and put the right people in the right positions, and not be afraid to recruit someone more experienced, more talent than you. I think it's a critical. Anyone that I don't recruit that many people now. We have a HR department to do that, but anybody that will roll into me, I recruit, and I make sure that they are better doing their role than I would ever have been.
So it's a big business, okay? It's 300 people now. Are you comfortable sharing roughly your turnover? Or
we're a group. We hope to hit 70 million this year.
Okay, so 70 million turnover business, which sounds like it started. You're talking that your mother was doing the accounts. Your dad was telling you maybe it's time you step away from. There were you mentioned your wife there as well. It's kind of almost. It feels like it almost started as a very small cottage almost business. Maybe that's not what it was, but can you tell me a little bit about kind of how big you were when you first started, and maybe kind of what the ambition was at that stage?
Yeah, I suppose I was trying to get a break from renewables potentially at the time, and I said back to basics. But I set up a van. You say a cottage. It actually was a house that I rented myself. My brother and a friend rented a 3-bedroom house, and I split my bedroom in two. I had an office one side, and then the other side, basically the bed hit 3 of the walls, and that's where it was set up. My mum used to come in and help in the office in the evenings. She was working for my dad, so it suited her. She'd come up in the evenings and help me. And I had the container in my dad's yard, and that's where the product was taken to. He often reminds me that it was more than the container I was using. I had plenty of yard space, and maybe I was using some of his shed as well as it was growing. But yeah, very, very small. And if we were back in 2006, people say, it's a big jump to set up on your own. In 2006, it wasn't. We were at the height of it in 2006. It was fairly easy decision. I don't take any credit for that. I think so. After is what distinguishes how the business does, where you start to hit recession, how you bolt down. So I remember in the same house, sitting down in this sitting room, and things had got tight. A number of builders couldn't afford to pay us. We had 9 staff at the time, including myself, and we had this idea. We were trained in solar. We know how to install solar, and this was solar thermal. It was for hot water systems. We know how to do it in new builds. How are we going to figure out the retrofit market? And I went to the UK, looked at a business in the UK, got some background in how they set it up. And I suppose the biggest thing was, it wasn't a big pilot change, a bit more trades, a bit more roofing involved, but the biggest piece we needed to drum up the business and marketing. And that was, I suppose, our first step into how we're going to market this. And we got some advice and help, but I suppose, long story short, we come up with the idea that we'd send a letter out to a certain area. So we picked Meath. There was 48,000 houses in Meath at the time. And the idea was we send this letter out telling them about solar, educating people, because people didn't understand what solar done. I was only 2 years probably into understanding what solar done myself. So educating them, telling them what it could do and the benefits of solar. So the idea was it would send it out in an envelope. The envelope had nothing written on it. So this could be the neighbour coming up the road to give you your 50 quid back that he borrowed off you. If a blank envelope comes into your letterbox, you're going to open it. But our biggest problem, believe it or not, at the time was we had this letter, and in the UK, the letter rip off piece at the bottom, and you'd send it back. And in our eyes was Ireland, will people fill in their name and address and leave it public and post it? And my idea was, no, we need to give them a stamped address envelope. So we need to rip it off, put in the stamped address envelope and send it back. We could not get a company in Ireland to put the envelope and the stamped address envelope, the letter and the stamped address envelope into one big envelope. So we had 9 electricians and plumbers sitting in the bottom room of that house. We could get them folded, but we couldn't get them inserted for 2 or 3 days, inserting letters, sitting watching daytime TV. So a lot of great memories in that house. Yeah, a lot of great memories. So
and Ciaran, just on that, so you had the new build was essentially kind of a B2B business, was it? Because you'd be talking to builders and saying, put this into the new build houses, but it was becoming a kind of a B2C where you actually had to reach out to individual households to retrofit their homes with this.
So a good majority would have been B2B. So you go into a housing estate and you're doing one house after the other. We also done the one-off because we could, remember, we sell electrical and mechanical. We could go into a one-off house, new build, take it and do the heating, plumbing, electrical and solar. We could do a full turnkey package for them one-off houses. But as the recession loomed, the builder obviously had stopped building. The one-off houses were non-existent. And yeah, we now were focusing on B2C, which is something.
So management committees and things like that of housing estates?
No, we were going direct to the home.
Okay.
Individual homes, whether it would be out in the country or in the city. And we were marketing. Initially in the letter, sending a letter out and telling people what solar could do. It could suit your house. Ireland is sunny enough. This can work. We're, in hindsight, probably one of the biggest pieces that made this work is at the time people didn't trust the banks. We were, is my money safe? Is it not? Was I better take the money out and invest it, put it on solar? I know I'm going to produce hot water. And there was a hot water system at the time. If I know I'm going to produce it day in, day out, I know I'm going to see the savings. And it was that way up of, well, was I better having the money sitting on my roof or sitting in the bank? And probably in some way the recession would have helped grow the business. As was having no real competitors at the time, and that's no disrespect to the few people that were doing it, but there was no real competition. Within 18 months, we were by far the largest in the country what we did, and we've grown substantially. We had plenty of people who started to follow, but we were the largest in the country very, very quick. But again, it was all B2C, so that was a whole new... I'm used to dealing with the builders, or even if it was a private house, I could be still working with the builder. It was customers, figuring out a payment plan, deposits, planning it all out. These were where whole idea was, how can we be different than most trades? And what we set out about doing was figuring out a one-day installation. So on a commercial or a residential, when we go to a house, it's 1 day in and out maximum, and we adjust everything to suit that. So we make sure when we land, so we'll do a survey, full technical survey, to make sure that the guys landing will have everything in their house. And we still measure to this day how many times install crew have to leave a job to pick up a part. Our idea is that they have everything, the vans, the kit, everything is lean, it's fitted out, they have everything. If something untoward happened in the house, maybe something failed, that they would have a spare in the van, they didn't need to leave. And that was probably our biggest USP, was little disruption. You invested in solar, it was a 1 day disturbance, and we left it back as we got it.
So that marketing campaign, that was kind of, it worked basically after the packaging the envelopes.
Back to the house again. There was a letterbox on the front of the house, and we sent out the mailer. And again, I was out on the road and came back home one day, and the door wouldn't open the house. That the amount of letters sitting behind the door, I couldn't get the door to open. I had actually to go in a window of the house to get into the house. So I knew at that point in time, right, this is, people understand. The little bit of education they got in the letter was enough to get us in the door to now bring it to the next level. Again, back to what we spoke about, that was me. So I had to go out to do that piece and try, to develop a pitch, to develop a sales pitch, what it was all about, how solar would work in Ireland, what it can do, more importantly, what it can't do, and start to get round these. But we quickly realised we needed to train a lot more than me to get out on the road and start selling. And then again, we needed to make sure that we had a pipeline of coming, so we had to get marketing set up and grow from there. So it was a very fast-paced environment, something very new to me. And again, like I said today, we went to the UK to investigate this. We've seen different models and different businesses in the UK, and we actually hired in some bodies from the UK had done similar roles into Ireland to help us set it up. But yeah, it was a total different transition.
So you would have gone from the kind of 9 people that you had at that time to, we must have kind of scaled up quite quickly, by the end of this, the kind of recession period, say kind of
2012, say 2012, we actually branched into the Northern Irish market. And at that time, I would say in Ireland, we probably had about 50 people. 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's huge growth really in that time.
In a short period, yeah.
You said fast-paced environment. What did it feel like, and what were the kind of things, can you remember, that were kind of going wrong that needed to be fixed, during that time? Or, what did you focus on?
Yeah, I suppose for us, we quickly realised where the price point needed to be, and we couldn't, to give the quality that we wanted to give back to the engineering background, and I'm sure we did it and did it correctly. One of our biggest problems, of course, the product. And that was a huge challenge and needed to be solved fairly quickly. And we were using a product that was coming from Belfast. The company in Belfast was actually buying out of the UK. The UK was buying from the brand in Germany, and it was actually manufactured in a place called St. Vith in Austria.
Okay.
And we knew if we were to continue using that product, which was a really good product, that our price point could throw this out, and we're not going to sell what we should sell. No other real benchmark in Ireland, because as I said, we were the first to market really. So we took on with the idea of, how can we get back? And I suppose the challenge for me was back the whole way to the start, not one notch or 2 notches. So we come up with a business plan. There was no ChatGPT at the time, but you can imagine what this business plan looked like. We pulled a business plan together, got a number of other business plans that I would have probably copied and pasted in certain areas, and went to Austria and told them all about the business, what Ireland could do, potential was there, the grant supports from government were there, and that we seen ourselves as being a market leader, but we needed to be buying the product slightly different than we were getting it to suit Irish roofs. Irish roofs are slightly different than the UK. So there's certain technology pieces we wanted modifications, but more importantly to us was that we could get direct to source, and we could get them slices back into our own pockets. And so we went. A good friend of mine was building a warehouse, and he did a nice set of plans. I got a set of his plans, put my own logo in the corner, but said, look, this is what I'm building. We had black vehicles at the time, and anybody I knew had a black vehicle. We got them into a picture. We put Activate logos on them, took a photograph. We put it in the business plan, said, look, this is the size of it, this is what we're scaling, this is our new warehouse. And to try get some traction. And we eventually got traction where they said, yeah, they'd come and meet us. And you can imagine the panic stations then. We were still in this bedroom in a house. Mm-hmm. We had a warehouse in town, but nothing like we had said we were planning on doing, or we had no potential at the time to even start that. So we're going to have to throw everything at this. We prepared, got everybody ready, got the staff ready. My brother, who didn't work in the business at the time, he even took off to pretend he was one of the staff. We had a few extra people around, and this is in 2009. I think it was the 9th of July, 2009. And they were to fly in, and I went from Carrick to Dublin to pick them up at the airport, and halfway up the road I got a phone call to say that the Dublin radar had failed at Dublin Airport. They couldn't fly in to see us to do the deal, and it was going to be 3 months before they'd get to see me again, that they were going around Europe, and the next time they'd be in Ireland it'd be 3 months. And I kind of said back to them, I said, look, if I could get to London City to meet you, could we do the deal without seeing you have enough information? And they kind of laughed at it and said, yeah, if you can get here, I'm sure we can do something. So I rang back the office, and the girl in the office said, look, is there any chance you can get me on a flight out of Belfast to London City? She came to RD, met me with my passport at the roundabout. I drove to Belfast, flew to London City, and see the rest is history. It was probably 3 years later before that company that started manufacturing everything we needed, realised that the things we had said had never been. But the most important part for them was the targets we said we were going to hit, we overachieved. being honest, at the time, I didn't believe I was going to achieve them. I believed this is what it's going to take for them to listen. And that's the number that went on the page, not what we were going to achieve. But yeah, we surpassed them all. We had a good laugh at it a number of years later. But it was a huge moment. I suppose the next pivotal point around that was we were obviously we were getting credit for it. And the day before the first shipment, I think it was €70,000 shipment, they notified us that they couldn't get credit insurance. And I said, look, our business is not in a bad place. We would never have had bad debt. You definitely must put in the business name wrong. I said, no, once we put Ireland in the address bar, and this was right at the start of the recession, once you put Ireland in the address bar, we are not getting credit for you. So the only thing was I had to raise €70,000 to get this shipment paid for. So it sat there delayed until I could raise the money. Every job I had, whether it's put a plug on a lead, a socket in a corner, any job I had snagged to get finished, I went around the country and finished everything I could to try gather the money. Borrowed some from family, and got the money together. But it was probably a really good learning point for me at the time. Was in, right, I'm expected to pay for all this. I have people who have ordered the product and haven't paid anything towards it. And we looked at, right, we need to start taking deposits. And again, we were working with SEI on the grant scheme, and the grant had said you couldn't do deposits. The model was you can't show an intent to do the work before you get the grant support. The grant support took us several weeks to get approved. You can't be lifting deposits. So we had that whole, let's call it a good discussion with SEI. I said, we need to change our business model. We need to allow for deposits. Yes, fully refundable if you don't get approved for the grant, and that's okay. So yeah, there was some tense conversations had to make sure that, but it taught us a really valuable lesson that we need to start lifting deposit. Cash flow was king, and it was critically important to the business. So what was absolutely weeks of sleepless nights to get that money together was probably the most valuable learning I had in the business, was to collect your deposits and get your cash flow right.
You said earlier that you were kind of a CEO by default, and at the time you mentioned, I didn't have a business degree or, finance or, accounting or any of that. And it would seem that these experiences that you had, obviously you were almost learning as you go on the important stuff. Like, for example, just cash flow. Like, that's something someone could sit in a classroom, right, and learn, but it's not really something someone would have the, I suppose, the personal gut feel for, to say, well, I need to go out now and I need to raise this money. And, and that being a huge learning. I don't know, do you agree kind of with what I'm saying, that I suppose it's more important, this kind of almost practical learning on the job, than it would be to learn it in a classroom in an academic sense?
I suppose for me, that's, I learned most hands-on and figuring out by experience, the good, the bad and the ugly in that way. I'm very fortunate that, as I said, my mum would have helped with accounts. My dad would have been very much, I remember buying my first car, I think that went on for about 3 years, where he was explaining the money coming in, this is your income, this is the cost of insurance, this is the cost of wear and tear. So he would have been I would have had a great education in the background. Well, it wasn't in a classroom, it was life experience. And I would have utilised them, and still to this day, I would often sit down and we're looking at this, we're looking at that. But yeah, it was hands-on. It was, school of hard knocks, I suppose. I remember one time having to borrow money from dad, and said, look, this is over if I can't get, I think it was €20,000 I had, and it was huge. But I had the vision that the 20,000 would get me over if I could. At that point, I said, look, 20,000 won't be another 20 next week. It won't be another. I need this. The banks aren't going to give it to me. I can't get it anywhere. We're in a deep recession. And he, I'll never forget, he turned around and he said, look, I'll give you the money, but you're going to give me interest on it, and you're going to give me 10% interest. And I was delighted with it. The worst part of it all was I got the money, I spent it the following week in what I had to do to keep the business running. And this same week, my dad's business got stung for a very similar amount of money. So he was after getting double whammy, which would have put him under some pressure. And I could do nothing about it. So it probably inspired me more so to work that bit harder to get that money back as quick as possible. So yeah, life experience, I suppose, and learning by the failures and the mistakes and making sure they don't happen again. And we still use that through the business today. Like I would say to people running projects within our divisions, fail fast, learn. And it's the most important part, where if we're afraid that, if everybody sits around with a block wall around them and that's all they can reach, I want them reaching outside. I want them taking it outside the box, but I don't need you to be out there for 6 months. I want you out there for 6 weeks to figure it out. And if it works, that's brilliant. If it doesn't, we learn and we move on.
You've talked a good bit now about sleepless nights, panic stations, various parts. The business would have been over if you didn't get this 20 grand loan from your dad. That stuff seems to happen a lot in the kind of early stages of a business. While you're growing, it's almost kind of black or white. You're either going to completely fall on your face or it's going to do okay and you're going to get through it. Do you think it's possible to grow a business to the size that you have without kind of going through that?
In that time, I don't believe so. Today, potentially, there's ways and means of doing it. It's easier to raise money, and you see a lot of companies raising money and to push really hard at the start, and it fails, and there's a lot of debt behind. So for me, and the type of business I wanted to be involved in, and I never dreamt of it going to this scale, but it was also that it was profitable, good solutions. Our business at the start and still today is Marron Activate Energy. So I put my name in front of it. I want it done, and I want it done right. And to put your name out there, and you want to make sure that everything is done above board and correctly. The last thing you want is that that risk of debt or bad debt, or maybe not paying a customer or a supplier, should I say. But yeah, I do believe. Yeah, for me, it definitely, that's the way it needed to happen for me. I needed to get them few knocks. I needed to get a few warnings to maybe straighten the ship up a little bit and learn. But I suppose grit and determination will do a lot for you. It'll pull you through a lot. But for me, is the people that I could afford to build in around me and with me. Just many people with me 15, 16 years. And they've seen it all. They've seen the house. They've seen the, small offices, maybe no windows for a long time. And I'll never forget the time that we agreed with the landlord that we could knock windows out. We had a party because this is great. We now could see outside. So people have seen that transition on, but they understood why we did things in a certain way. And even at different times where it would have got a little bit quiet, I'm very passionate about keeping good people and making sure they're employed and making sure they're treated well. And we went through a few blips along the years, and we were in our old offices, which was in a warehouse. And every time we had a blip, the roofers, the plumbers, electricians, everyone came back, and we built more offices. We knew it was going to come. We could foresee that this is going to get bigger. Yes, we're hitting a hurdle on the road, but you ain't sitting at home. You ain't out looking for another job. You need to know your wage is going to be paid on a Friday, and that you're on the right train when you're with us. And many of them would still talk to this day about building the office, hanging the doors, fitting the lights, putting down the carpet. And they've done it all. But bringing them people on the journey was critical for me, and it's critical that we could support them.
How important is that support bit? Because it's almost easy to bring people in some cases, right? Especially during the recession, right? People were kind of looking for jobs and stuff like that, but then looking after them and making sure they're kind of happy and that they have a job and they feel secure. Was that a learning curve to get up to speed with?
One of the probably fortunate parts of the recession was we had our pick, because we were a business that was growing and doing very well in an area that wasn't doing so well. So the trades, electricians and plumbers, roofers, you had a lot less work. So I suppose it was a two-way streak. We had a pick of them, but they were delighted to have work. And they, I would say, would work that extra bit hard to make sure that they had a good job. And for me, it was important to make sure this was a new train. Like, it's not training. We had all these people trained. We were across in Europe getting them trained. We did some in-house training early on. And these were a very important part of our business. So when our business hit a blip, I needed these people for when it came right. So you had to take care of them. You need to make sure that they were there, that it's not, plenty of businesses would say, cut your thoughts, get rid of your people, recruit again. For me, it was the knowledge is in these people. And, they rolled in behind me when we were growing. I need to roll in behind them now. I suppose we had a few blips along the way, but probably one of the most difficult ones, and I'm sure for anybody speaking to you, was COVID. Because at that time, our business was so residential focused, we couldn't get into houses. We couldn't get out to sell. We couldn't get out to survey. We couldn't get out to install. And that was probably one of the most difficult days, was to stand in front of all your staff and say, right, we have to cut a cloth. We need to go home. We can't work. We put a really good package in place to make sure that they were comfortable, that they could make their outgoings, that they had no fears. We tapped into them, where their managers would speak to them weekly, and then we'd speak to them collectively throughout as needed. And as it extended, we would extended supports to make sure that nobody was under pressure. I suppose in one way everyone was under pressure, but the best we could do as a business was to loop in, talk to them, work with them, support them, and financially support them, most importantly. And I suppose one of the biggest rewards for me was when we returned to work, all but one person returned to the business. I suppose we built that respect. We supported them, but all but one, and at that stage we probably had 120, 150 people, and all but one came back. So it was very, very difficult, but very rewarding when we came back out of it, to realise that by supporting your people, by bringing them on that journey, they'll show you that loyalty back in spades.
It's just a very high growth business, because even there you're talking about during COVID, which everyone was coming back, like that was 2022 probably or something like that when people were coming back to the office. It's only 2025 now, so you've more than doubled potentially the people and everything since that time. So well my what I'm wondering is, as the business gets bigger and it has more resources, and you're obviously far more experienced than you were when you were first starting out and you had that initial growth spurt, but I suppose, does it feel in any way easier now than it did before, or has it kind of been a roller coaster the whole way along?
I would say the challenges don't change the whole pile. It's rapid growth, so we need a lot of people and a lot of good people. I'm very fortunate I can share the pain and the stress of that and getting that done. So pre-COVID, we had no HR department, no recruitment. There's 5 or 6 people in that area now, and their jobs is to make sure that recruit, retain, and then working with our staff to make sure that feedback loops, that our managers, we've elevated a lot of people within the business, and something that it's a tough decision. The business is growing so rapidly, and we've taken people through the business who've come in at a very basic level and taken them right through different levels within the business and growing, and somewhat you were dragging them with you. Maybe not that they wanted it, but you could maybe see that you needed someone there and you felt they were best positioned. And a lot of the time it was one of the biggest points, and even today for recruitment, is you got to understand our business, our culture, what we do, how we do it, why we do it. And it's so important to us that everybody comes in, and in the first 6, 8, 10 weeks, that's really what we want them to understand, is what we're all about, why we're here, our history. And when you're trying to recruit in a business growing, you realise you need someone in an area, and you're looking at someone across the table going, he's here 10 years, he's here 5 years, she's there 6 years, she understands that bit, that's fast-tracked. And you're bringing them on that journey. Some, it worked really well, for some with some difficulty, but all of them have succeeded in it. And as the business grows, there's a certain finite number of people that you can do that with, and now you're starting to recruit people into higher levels within the business. Like an example, we had no CFO, we had nobody in the business that would have been fit to do a CFO role. So it's very, very senior hire, sitting in an executive leadership team. And that was a big challenge and a lot of work. That's something that I took on personally with. I'm delighted how it went. Really good CFO, understands the business, understands the culture. but a huge move. And that's just one. There's a number of levels in the business where we had to take people in to maybe manage people who were in the business 4 or 5 years. And I think that's where some of the challenges is. They haven't maybe seen it all or understood it all. And that's why we find it's so important that they understand where we've come from, why we do things the way we do things, why we've changed things, where we'd like to go, and bringing everyone on that journey. But the recruitment process is I suppose shared among us all. We've a referral program to our staff, which is very successful as well. So happy staff will encourage more people. The headache is still there, and the growth is still there. We've had some acquisitions which bolt on personnel, which makes it easier, but you also have that challenge of getting the cultures aligned.
What about money? So I suppose for you personally, as this business has grown, money has probably become less of an issue. You're really less panicking about being able to pay people, pay yourself, and all that sort of thing. Has that made it easier, I suppose, making more money as time went on?
Absolutely, it's made it easier. So as the business was growing in early days, everything was stretched. People were stretched. We were looking long hours. We were in premises that definitely weren't suitable to us. But when you hit that comfort level of we can invest in a new premises, or we can invest in more people or technology resource, yes, it definitely makes things more comfortable. But I think what tests you is the time before that. It's how you got through it. And that's not to say that everything that we want, we buy today, but it is somewhat easier if we decide we want to look at a different market or look at a different solution, whether it be health and safety. We've invested huge amounts in health and safety in the last number of years. And that has transitioned the business and the installation side of our business immensely. But 10 years ago, could we have done that? Absolutely no way. Could a startup today do it? No. But yeah, it gives you that level of comfort, but it also, you have to be very careful where it's spent and how it's spent. And we monitor everything. As I mentioned, we have a CFO. Everything's monitored, return on investment and how it performed for the business. But it does make scaling a little bit easier. The people is probably the most important, and then money to follow.
You said earlier that you kind of never dreamed that it would get to the size it is. And I'm wondering, well, what was the kind of at the outset? Can you remember how big you kind of wanted it to get? Can you remember thinking about that at all?
Yeah, I was 23, I think, when I set up on my own. And the vision then was that I want to buy a house, before to get a mortgage, buy a house, have a car, and the general things in life, live a comfortable life. I always enjoyed out and sociable, but there was many years through the building of the business. There was no going out. There was nothing. I was telling a group of staff, actually new hires, we do a coffee with a CEO. So once a month, all new recruits, I meet with them for a coffee and tell the story. And I was telling one last week where the same question was asked: how did you come through it? And we had nothing. I had an SSIA savings scheme back in the day. Every penny I had went into it. I wasn't writing wages. Anything I had, I sold that, and I had to get down the car. I was driving around in the van. And I remember distinctly when I was back to the house we were talking about, and my brother was living there, and a friend of ours, and they were going out every weekend. He had a really good job, so both guys had good jobs, and I was sitting at home, and before talking in the morning, the phone rang, and it was my brother, and can you help? What's wrong? Oh, just need a wee push, just a wee push. And I thought, these boys were out. I had a good night out, and someone's after driving, and they're stuck. What's going on here? Little push. It will be okay if we get a little push. And jumped out of bed, put on my clothes, ran down the stairs, ran out the front door, heading for the car, and I could hear him shouting. I goes, "Done early home. Where are they?" The pair of boys were over sitting on the swing looking for a push. So I remember that, but it was just a breaking point for me, and it was, I always knew I had to sacrifice so much to get what we got. I remember going in the door of the house, putting the snip up on the door so the boys couldn't get in, and throwing their duvets out the window But it was just the sacrifices you were making, and like it's something that I would do on someone. It was really, really funny, but at that time, it just took me days to even get over the idea of what was after happening. But yeah, a lot of sacrifices. My wife sacrificed a lot. She had a car. We sold her car. She moved into that house with me. The heat couldn't. I couldn't keep the house warm. So we'd done. There was a load of sacrifices along the way, but I think it makes it more. You appreciate more when it does come to that. You have that money. You have the comforts, and it's much more rewarding than potentially having to hit potluck at the start.
And now that you're in the position of, I suppose it's a sizable business. You said yourself you didn't think it would get to this level. What do you think about now? Because you're growing really fast. Do you want to continue to grow really fast for another 20 years? Or how big do you have an idea as to how big you'll be in 10 years or where you want to be?
Yes, was there's plenty of life left of me. Yes, the bit I enjoy, and especially more recently, is the growth. So at the start, it was probably figuring the technology, understanding our offering, what we can do for a customer, and getting hands-on. Now I'm more enjoy the growth and the growth stages. So I'm on the business rather than in the business. And as the business continues to grow, that's what really ticks my box. So we've high growth plans for the next 3 years across, as I mentioned, Ireland, UK, and indeed Europe. But yeah, it was for me. It's there's no finite date of what that looks like. I haven't mentioned, but back in 2018, SSE Electricity invested in our business. They took a 50% shareholding, so I own 50% of the business and continue to do to this day. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy work. There's not a day that I go into work and say, I wish I was at home today or away. I do enjoy it. I get a good kick out of it. I enjoy seeing people in the business grow and develop, and people who have changed roles and their roles have changed, they've developed. You look at what car they pulled up the first day and what car they're driving today and how that has progressed for them. So I get a great kick out of it. Have I got a date in time where things will change? Absolutely no way. I do think that if the business isn't growing, it's not as challenging for me. I have people that run the business day in, day out. They don't need me day in, day out. So yeah, there's no set agenda. I'm comfortable. I enjoy it. I think the most important part is that they enjoy it, and you enjoy the people around you. But yeah, there's still a lot to come.
You mentioned there about SSE investing in the business, but before that, you had the SSE Electricity Arena deal.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to me a little bit about that? Because I know I heard you say that you agreed not to get paid if you didn't deliver on time. And for anyone who's gone through a large construction project knows that they never reach the time. So that must have been, you must have had a lot of confidence in what you were doing at that stage to offer that.
Yes, I suppose for us, in 2012, we moved into the market in Northern Ireland, and that's where we transitioned to solar PV, which is what we see in the fields and on rooftops today, is electrical solar. So we cut our teeth in Northern Ireland. There was government incentives up there for residential and commercial. It quickly became the largest residential, or one of the largest, and it's where we really got into commercial, and we would complete a number of cinemas, cold storage units, petrol stations, and the SSE Arena project came up. And we'd done a little bit of work in Ireland with SSE on solar thermal, maybe a little bit of boiler work back in the day, and we were the only Irish company that had got down to the last, I think, 7 or 8 in the tender, because Ireland weren't skilled in solar PV. The UK is where it was at in 2012. So we were up against 7 other companies. And we were probably sitting at 5 or 6, in my eyes, just analysing the room and analysing the correspondence. And I remember going up to Dublin one day to meet them to do a final pitch on it. And I said, look, very good chance we're not winning this. What can I do to make this happen? I went into the room and went through all, and I suppose this is where the engineering comes out in me. I could see some flaws in what they were designing, and was showing them other solutions, and I probably had the room in a place where I was comfortable that they understood that I had the knowledge of how to deliver this. They were talking to the guy that was actually going to get up on that roof and do it with his own team. I had that bit, but were they looking at me as being financially stable? No. We were still a growing business. We were new to the Northern Irish market. We'd not long gone into it. And had we a reference site? We'd no reference site at that scale. So well, it feels so small today. It was the largest rooftop in Ireland. It was 420 kilowatts. And I at one point I said, right, this isn't coming. And I just turned around and said, look, guys, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You don't pay me unless we deliver this. So the deadline was the end of March 2017. If that project wasn't finished the end of March, it wouldn't get the government incentives for the next 20 years. So this was a real pivotal point for them. If they didn't get that, they were out. And I said, look, if I don't deliver it, don't pay me. You've nothing to lose here. Give me the job. Don't pay me till I'm finished. And I've commissioned and everything, all the paperwork signed off. So, yeah, interesting conversations. And I come back to the office to tell the team what I was after doing. I remember one of the guys going, this could be lights out. And at that point in time, it was the contract was probably about €500,000. It was huge, by far the biggest contract we've had at that time. If it didn't work out, we were under severe pressure.
But you must have had good cash flow, like to be able to, like, how long was the project going to be going on for?
Is probably, it was a 10-week plan.
Okay. So it's not a kind of months and months and months that I was thinking. Okay, no, right. Okay.
10-week plan. And my idea was that we'd offload some of that to some of our suppliers. We would have been okay on. We would have had reserves there, but it would have put you in a very uncomfortable position. But in my eyes, it was calculated. It wasn't going to kill us, but it would bring us back to basics. And I said, look, lads, this is where it's at. We don't have nothing signed yet. They have to give us the nod. But I believe we can do this. And yeah, we got the nod. I think it was that Friday. And this had to work. So the amount of work that went into that in the background, it was still the most complex job we've done today. We've done acres and acres and acres of solar. This was the most complex. It was a live venue. There's kids in and out, ice dome, there's shopping in it. And we had one 40-foot truck in and out every day. That was it. We'd only 2 crane locations, and we had to plan all this. And we had a plan down to the nth degree of what we could bring in every day. Remember, if we couldn't bring it in and we're stuck on the roof, we couldn't finish that day's work. So we had it all planned. And the main part of the job I did down to, we can deliver this in 10 days on the roof, is basically what you can see. All the infrastructure, there's a lot of work going on in the background on it, but it was 10 days. And Aidan, my brother, who was huge into lean and process, but both of us spent weeks, getting this planned. And I remember we took the guys up the cruise. We took our own cruise up and looked at the job and said, look, this is the plan. We're going to do this. And we had said to the guys, 10 days, we can do this in 10 days. This is how we're going to do it. Today is all about learning your whereabouts, health and safety, getting inducted, understanding the project. We went through the drawings, where everything was going. And I remember talking to some of the leaders on the way home, and they said, oh, guys aren't buying in. There's no way we can do this in 10 days. And I said, look, you got to trust me. And if you trust me, they'll trust you. We can do this in 10 days. So the first day we arrived, 3:00 came, we'd no material left. The guys weren't happy, said, you expect us to do this in 10 days? Bear in mind, I'd done an incentive with the guys. I said, look, guys, there'll be a bonus if we do it in 10 days. If we do it in 9 days, there'll be a bonus plus the extra day. So there was a nice incentive to get the project done. And their whole pushback was, Ciaran, how can we get it done if you don't bring the material to us? And I had that going, I can only bring in 1 lorry. But if you deliver that lorry, I only have 9 lorries. We don't need the 10th day. So after 2 or 3 days, the guys started to see the rhythm was working. And yeah, we were very, fortunate. We finished every day before 4 o'clock, and on the last day we had the crane packed up, everything done 6 o'clock in the evening, and everyone was buzzing, including myself. Now the project wasn't finished, there's still a lot to happen, but very controllable. But I think that was a big pivot for us to the commercial and stand up and be counted on a number of fronts to say we can do big rooftop. We've done the biggest one in Ireland. We were very comfortable. It was a complex one. As I said, it's still the most complex one to date. But for SSE, they really stood up and noticed us and said, right, this guy put his money somewhere. That's when the communication started to talk about how we could work together. And 12 months later, they ended up investing and buying 50% of the business. So, yeah, it was a nice ending. Yeah, risky at the time, but I would still say calculated risk. Some of the guys in the office still say madness, but yeah, it worked out in the end.
What was your reasoning for selling half the business?
I suppose for us at the time, we were the largest what we done in the south. We were still solar thermal technology. We're the largest we were doing, but it was starting to slow off a little bit. A lot of other businesses were, I suppose, copying how we were marketing, how we were doing things and doing events. It was getting a little bit more diluted. And in the north, we had a good run from 2012 to 2017, but the incentives had disappeared. We were looking at it. Wasn't really we didn't need the investment. We needed the customers. And we looked at SSE. They had 700,000 customers, both residential and commercial. And we have access to these customers. They can now cross-sell with solar and work together on what that could look like as a opportunity. So the real ambition for us was the exposure to the customers. And for them, it was that tick box as well. They wanted to, they were known in the industry for two things. One was selling electricity and the other was wind. And for them, it was they have that solar offering. So it was a good match. I suppose at the time telling the staff what you're after doing and going, what's after happening here and what change is this going to bring. But we're very fortunate in our partners. Business is status quo. It's still run. There's nobody from SSE sits in our business. Yes, we have members on the board and we report. We meet quarterly, but it has been the status quo. The business is growing. Our staff seen no change apart from a logo. And we had that opportunity to extend to SSE's customers, and I suppose probably more importantly than even that, within a number of months of the transaction happening, Ireland had announced a residential grant for solar PV. So all of a sudden, where all the plans of going to meet all their customers and talk to potential clients, all of a sudden PV was out there, residential grants. It went crazy, and we had been selling residential in the north. We had cross-trained all our sales teams, or surveyors, or engineers on the site. We had them all ready. We were just waiting for this to happen. So we got a really, really good head start, a bit like the first time round in solar thermal on the site. We got a really good head start and became the largest basically overnight. At the very first register of solar PV installers in Ireland had 7 people on it. We were one of them 7. It crossed 500 at one stage last year. So yeah, we got a good head start.
You're doing the Leadership for Growth program, and I'm wondering, because you're already quite big, and loads of companies that seem to go through that program have done it at a kind of a smaller stage, and it's really helped them kind of almost get to as big as you are. What are you kind of getting from that program, and how useful is it being to you?
Yeah, I suppose for us, it was 3 years ago, I think, we done the Go Global for Growth program with Enterprise Ireland. And that's where we really looked back at ourselves and go, look, we're talking about doing it. We're talking about growing. What we did? We did a gap analysis on personnel. We realised we needed a CFO. We needed a people department. We were in our old offices, and we kept saying, but we'll do that when we get to our new offices. We plan to build our new offices. And we done that course, myself, Aidan, which is my brother, who's a COO, and our Chief Commercial Officer, Gary Connolly. The three of us done that course together. And we got a real sense of now this should happen now. Why are we longer for things? Why are we talking about, when we get to the office, we'll do this, we'll do that. When we completed that course, we sat down and, within a number of weeks, we had offices in containers beside our existing offices, a boardroom outside. And just said, let's grow into this here. The building will come. Let's grow into this. And I suppose by realising the small gaps that we had and what we needed to do, we got huge benefit out of the Go Global for Growth program. And that program is for smaller businesses. And our plan was to do that one and then go into Leadership for Growth. What probably has happened is the business has grown exponentially. And by the time we got to Leadership for Growth, we're probably higher at a bigger size business than the traditional. But all businesses have the same problems. And whether it's be smaller businesses that are trying to grow or companies who have gone through growth, there's been some people in it that have exited one business. It's their second time round. They might be small, but have done a big exit. I get a lot of, as I said, I didn't go to college for any of this, but any education I get in this is through programs like meeting people, and no more than I'm meeting later on today, and learning from them. And I enjoy that give back as well. If, someone maybe is in a pinch and I give them a bit of information that may work and help, I get a real kick out of that. But that's where I find educating and learning and what's next, and meeting people. Like I've been fortunate to be on the Entrepreneur of the Year program as well in 2023. And like, where else do you get to meet? We went to Singapore, 120 entrepreneurs in one room, and the energy was unbelievable. And I get a real kick out of that. Meet fantastic people along the way, but really, you come home with I remember the first time away with EY, I come home to the guys that sat in the room and just ripped up a strategy and said, we're not thinking big enough. We need to go bigger. Things need to change. This is where we should be aiming for. I know we did this for Go Global. We said that. We need to do this. We need to go bigger. So it really challenging. And Leadership for Growth is the same. We've just come through an acquisition. You're looking at other people who have done acquisitions. You've learned from them as well. And it really makes you think. There's two things for me it does. It gets you out of the business. It literally gets, so Leadership for Growth, I spent a week in Barcelona, a week in Munich. I go to New York in September. And then there's a certain amount of days here. So all in all, in this 12-month calendar, I'll have over 30 days invested in this. So it's time out of Activate and on the business with like-minded people. So I don't come away any day going, I didn't learn it today or didn't figure anything out, or have maybe come back and look at the business with a different set of glasses on. But yeah, that's still my education piece. I enjoy it. And Entrepreneur of the Year, it's unbelievable. I don't think there's anything will ever match what that was for me. That journey was exceptional. Still is. We meet up regularly. The class of 23 are very close, but it extends to all the people. We went to South Africa last year. I remember one of the mornings coming down for breakfast and landed in, myself and Dennis O'Brien having breakfast together. Where else are you going to get that? So I suppose that's my university.
Would it be fair to say, like, these programs and everything, there's an educational piece, almost like structure? Here is how we do this, and it's almost technical. But it seems, while talking to you and from talking to other people that have done similar programs, it's more an inspirational thing, as you're coming back to the business and saying, we're not thinking big enough. That's not almost something, it's almost not an educational piece. It's almost just an ideas piece.
And I would agree 100%. And I would say in both Entrepreneur of the Year and the Leadership for Growth program, you probably get more from out of the classroom than sit and listen to the speaker. It's the people that you've traveled with, that you sit with and see what they've gone through and where they're going, and you come back with a new sense of what we can do, and I suppose it gives you another level of energy. You never come back drained from it. My own team would say they dread seeing me coming back. What ideas he's going to come back with here? But it's definitely not all learned in the classroom. It can be learned over a pint or dinner in the evening. And peer-to-peer learning for me is the way I learn best. It's a much more relaxed environment as well. But you're talking, you listen to someone, and that's no disrespect to a lecturer in a classroom, but you listen to someone who's actually gone through it, who has seen the pain point, whether that be financially, whether it be with people, whether it be with technology, like AI, where everyone's talking about AI today. But to have 50, 60, 70 people that you can bounce off, what are you doing with AI? Does that work? Does it not? Rather than listening to the person trying to sell it to you. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and I make sure I make time for it. It's important to take time out of it. You meet and have new friends for life from it. But huge learnings, and I said, for someone who doesn't have a business degree, has no intention of learning and going back to do business degree, this is where it all comes to life for me.
Ciaran Marron, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in today. Thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find out more about yourself and Activate?
Thank you very much. Online, we're on all the socials, but activateenergies.com, you'll find out all our solutions from residential, commercial, industrial, right through to utility scale solutions.
Ciaran Marron, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.